This week we're here at the Royal Festival Hall on the South Bank, one of the premier concert venues in the world, but which, like arts organisations across the capital, is bracing itself for budget cuts. Hello and welcome to the London section of the Politics Show. A little later on, we're looking at why pirate radio stations are proliferating in the capital and proving so difficult to stop. But first, some of the country's leading artists, David Hockney, Tracey Emin and Damien Hirst among them, have joined a campaign against planned government cuts to arts funding. Each week in protest, the first was unveiled here at the Royal Festival. Well, next to part of the capital's cultural life that no one seems to be able to control, London's pirate radio stations springing up like never before, despite a constant game of cat and mouse between them and Ofcom, the government regulator. Not much anyone can do. Andrew Cryan reports.
London's airwaves are almost completely jammed. On top of licensed radio stations, the capital has about 80 pirates, double the number of legal stations. It's thought that nearly 1 million people listen to them, or about 16% of the city. In some boroughs, it's as much as 40%.
Well, we're talking about 8 minutes away from the hour of 10 o'clock, right here on the Big One Station FM, London's leading community radio station.
Station FM is one of them, and has been on the air for 20 years.
We have a purpose to serve the people with some alternative music, alternative information, getting news and views over to them, letting them be heard so they can get their say over, which in, you know what I mean, in the legal world, in the other commercial radio stations, they don't seem to be able to get a chance.
But pirate radio stations are illegal. Unregulated, they jam up the airwaves and make life difficult for licensed radio stations.
You are listening to Resonance FM.
Resonance FM, a licensed arts-based community station, is one of the victims.
They might tend to blot out our signal entirely. That's when it becomes problematic for us. Well, it happens continuously, days on end, yes. Yeah, weeks, forever in theory.
Now, interference from pirates can be very annoying for legitimate radio stations and for people trying to listen to them. But what could be a bit more dangerous is that pirates can sometimes interfere with the emergency services, so police and ambulance, and also air traffic control. In fact, Ofcom have told us there was one incident quite recently where they nearly had to close London City Airport because of pirate interference. Pirate radios have been part of the capital's radio scene since the 1960s, when the likes of Radio Caroline played the pop music, which at the time, mainstream radio refused to touch. But no government has ever managed to stop the pirates broadcasting. Ofcom, the communications regulator, are involved in a constant game of cat and mouse with the pirate radios, raiding the stations, confiscating their material, and prosecuting the people who do it. But since it's hardly a new problem for the authorities, why are there still so many?
I think it's about prioritising resources. We just don't have the resources to go after every pirate on the air. And the trouble is, we do an awful lot of raids, but once we've done a raid, quite often that station will come back on air within hours because the equipment that they need to broadcast is relatively cheap.
The penalties can be severe, but aren't necessarily enough to stop people.
I've been fined to date, and I ain't proud of it, nearly over 80 grand. And it hurts. It really hurts.
But with the cuts coming, Ofcom say they can offer no guarantee the money spent on shutting down pirates won't be reduced even more. So ironically, while other parts of the capital's cultural life could be damaged by the coming cuts, it may be that with less money spent on stopping them, the pirate radio thrives.
Andrew Cryan reporting there. Trevor Nelson, Radio 1 DJ, is with me now, and also Errol Hines, who's a pirate radio presenter. Trevor, I mean, you don't mind people knowing, everyone does know you came up through the pirate radio route. It is illegal now, I know you know that, we all know that, but is enough being done, or can enough be done to counter it?
Well, I mean, I did mine 20 years ago. It was the launch of my whole career, and I've been pretty successful. I would never imagine pirate radio would still be as prominent as it is today. I've spoken to Ofcom. I did a documentary recently about it, about the state of pirate radio today, and I just can't believe there hasn't been a
And
compromise
what was your
somewhere.
conclusion? What? Because it is rich. It's a rich cultural thing, but it still remains illegal. What?
It
yeah.
still remains illegal. I don't think people who partake in pirate radio, and some legendary DJs have before me, 25 years before me, will ever stop, because music's something that drives people passionately, and they want to let people hear their music.
And you're saying you find it kind of strange that there hasn't been an accommodation. People can't get around a table and find.
Yeah, I find
Because, and the problem is the lack of space on the.
Yeah.
On the dial, is it?
Well, when you're doing pirate radio, you don't think about these things. These things aren't. You want to get on air. You want to get heard. A lot of the stars of today, a lot of MCs have had #1 hit records, developed their career on pirate radio. You can't stop this. It's an immovable thing. I thought the authorities somehow would have met around a table and sorted something out for these kids, because it's something that occupies their time. It keeps them out of trouble a lot of the time, and I just think it's something that there should be a compromise.
But one of the things, as we hear, though, Errol Hines, when a lot of people want to do it and you do it, is that, day to day, it affects the transmission of, Trevor on our radio
Well, of
stations
course,
or
one-
other people at Radio 1, but also the more important point we hear in the film gets in the way, of emergency services. I mean, that endangers lives.
Well, of course, I mean, wherever one life is endangered, I mean, there's a problem, and one cannot dismiss that. But the fact remains, and this is in agreement with Trevor, there should by now have been a way where we can sit down at the table with local or central government to discuss this issue, which will not go away. Community or pirate radio stations reaches the parts where other radio stations cannot reach. Let's face it, some issues that are debated locally, national radio does not carry that. And so therefore, people's views locally are not addressed or
and
represented.
there are a lot of foreign language
Quite a lot of
stations,
foreign
particularly.
languages.
And why have you not? Why are there so many? Why are you not being given the space?
Well, why there's so many is because I suppose lots of people, there's a need for it, and that's why it continues to grow. And over 20 years, Trevor said he's rather surprised that nothing has been done thus far.
Well, of course, the number of radio stations has incredibly. They have given governments a large number more licences, hasn't it?
Well, indeed, so, but not enough, obviously.
Well, you could say that about anything, isn't it? I mean, where do you stop?
No, but in
anyone who wants to get in front of a microphone, broadcasting their particular, views, and that's another thing we should come on to, because there's a brand of you could say anything on these kind of radio stations. which
Yes.
Trevor and I would never get away with saying, and rightly so.
Well, I cannot speak for everyone. I can speak for the station which I'm involved with, and we've been there for nearly 20 years. And what we do, we provide a service that is needed in the community. For example, the rise of knife and gun crimes, for instance, and indeed the abuse of drugs, is something that we regularly run, soundtracks,
Yeah.
in favor of what the police is saying. Don't do
Yeah.
drugs, don't do knife, don't do guns.
So you'd say you have a role there.
Yes.
Trevor, what do you think the way forward is? I mean, there are these, presumably, because of the pressure, these community licences. I have to admit, I don't fully understand them, but there are these new licences recently that have been around, have they, to try and draw in some of these pirate radio stations?
I'm a bit confused myself. When we came off air 20 years ago, we were told if you come off air and you apply for a license, you have a good chance of getting it. We applied, we didn't get it. We reapplied, we got it. We went the legit route. We were pirates, then we became legal. Okay, I'm surprised today that something hasn't been significantly sorted out. I don't know what community licenses mean to pirates who regularly broadcast.
Would you ever allow an amnesty for pirate radio station, or would you allow an amnesty? And are we? Is what we're talking about almost irrelevant, given that the internet is soon going to leave us enough space for everyone?
Free for all
Well,
out there.
indeed, but you see, I mean, the fact is this, right, is that we have made some efforts always to try and become, if I may use the word, legit. But so many people would like to do this, but there's no clear path as to how one does this. Not enough information is around for one to learn how this can be
There are one or
made
two
possible.
that have become legit recently, like Rinse FM become legit, but
Yeah.
I
That was through a community license.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that, in other words, we have to make greater efforts at our level and at local government and indeed government level to see how we can deal with this. It's not a problem, this issue, right, which will not go away. I'm sad if any lives are endangered because of anything that we do. Hopefully, there has got to be a solution. There have been many problems in the past.
And we hope we can find one. Well, on that note, looking for a solution to both of you.
Indeed.
Thanks very much indeed.